Hey guys, Shalana here. Welcome to the Bin Zone, and Bird Box is back. We're back in the Bird Box universe with Bird Box Barcelona, and let's get into this because Bird Box Barcelona is not a sequel to Bird Box, but it is more like a continuation of sorts, set in the same universe, but doesn't really hit the same. And overall, while being a decent movie, Bird Box Barcelona is not going to have that cultural phenomenon that the original Bird Box had. Cause y'all remember, y'all was out there doing the Bird Box challenge. I seen y'all, I remember. What really sets Bird Box Barcelona apart from the original is twofolds. One, it's the main character of Sebastian, as well as two, being the expansion of the creatures, how they now have more meaning behind who those creatures are, what they do, where they come from. I mean, more so than they did in the original, as well as taking the character of Sebastian, which I think he's just not that likable. Think about it, in the original we had Mallory. Mallory wasn't that likable. She didn't even name the kids. Remember, their names was boy and girl. She didn't show that level of attachment to them. However, Mallory as a character, you understood why she did that. It was something about her character that you kind of got behind. But when it came to the character of Sebastian, there was no real redeeming quality about the character. But let's dive deeper into Sebastian, his journey through the movie, because this video as a whole has spoilers. So if you have not seen Bird Box Barcelona, you have been warned. We're diving deep into spoiler territory now. Sebastian as a main character is flawed, and not flawed in the good sense where it's a flawed character and he's going through his hero's journey to be redeemed at the end of the movie. No, the very conceptual idea of Sebastian as a character is flawed. His introduction, his motives, we're introduced to Sebastian and initially we're meant to be sympathetic with him, and he took his daughter to the skate rink. He did the little fun father-daughter thing in this post-apocalyptic world, and that was sweet and endearing to his character. Then he gets robbed by blind people. Again, kind of heartwarming because he's trying to protect his daughter. But early on, I'm like, even at that point, I already knew or had a suspicion of the plot twist because they robbed him and left his daughter alone. That was weird. But then he's introduced to the new group, he's integrated into that group, and now I feel like the story's picking up. Now I'm interested about this new group, and they introduced a nice set of characters. The guy with the no eyes, like, I like that group of characters. And then Sebastian goes and turns on them, kills them all. It's revealed that Sebastian is a crazy, kind of like Gary in the first movie. And referencing back to Gary in the first movie, Gary was the first one to introduce us to people that could see the creatures and not instantly off themselves, people who could actually live and go out and try to convince others to look at the creature. And Gary was the one that gave us our first visual of what these creatures look like, and that's why we have some basis for understanding the little we do of the Bird Box universe. Going back to Sebastian, seeing him do what he did to that group of people and him watching their souls, and us coming to the realization that maybe Anna isn't there, and we now get his flashback with Father Sebastian, and we suddenly understand, and they kind of slow feed us or slow drip us the ultimate fate of Anna, but we ultimately figured out what happened to Anna. But that doesn't justify Sebastian's character, and I know it's meant to make him more sympathetic, but it doesn't work. And even his connection to Claire and Sophia and ultimately his sacrifice to them doesn't hit the same because of all the atrocious things he's done. Granted, he saved those two people and he's redeemed for his daughter, but how many countless of people was he doing this for? Those flashbacks were from months ago. How many groups that he's killed in his quest for these godlike creatures or whatever they are? And now we're going to dive deeper into the creatures of this universe, because ultimately the creatures were always the more fascinating parts about Bird Box. Because what are they? Where did they come from? This movie kind of leaned into the fact that they were more angelic creatures as opposed to aliens or monsters like we thought in the original movie. And with the images that Gary showed in the first movie being the only sort of reference we have to what these creatures could look like, we kind of thought that they were monsters or aliens. But now in Bird Box Barcelona, they're being referred to as angels. And now I see that these creatures are one of two things. They're either aliens or they're angels. And I mean angels in the most basic, raw, carnal form of an angel. And coming from the images that we have so far, these creatures come off almost Lovecraftian, almost as though they're monstrous aliens or angels. And I mean angels in the most basic biblical form of angels, the more cherubic, the more seraphim-like angels in their pure form, which are described as monstrous creatures when you actually see descriptions, biblical, historical descriptions of angels are monstrous. So I can see why some of these people in this world could view them as angels, but I also can see why they can be aliens, because this movie peeled away some of the layers behind the ethos of the monsters. We actually got to see their point of view and how they see the world. And when the souls of people die and Sebastian watches them go up, and coming from the point of view of the creatures, we know that they're a form of ethereal levitating creatures, because they're always coming up from a higher vantage point and they're looking down as though they're floating or they're coming from above. While initially I believe that these creatures were not corporeal, they could not be touched, we find out at the end that they have one captured. The humans have captured one. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the method in which these creatures function, because these creatures function on an almost telepathical, almost psychic level. They force you to kill themselves once you gaze upon them. They play tricks on you. You hear voices. They tap into your mind and they force you. So it's a psychic attack. It's some sort of mental symbiosis influence. It's wild. Let's just say it's wild. It's a wild connection, and it hits you on a mental level, which causes you to act against your own will. You see, it triggers your memories. So they get into your mind and they're able to control you via mental manipulation, telepathy, or some form of a psycho attack. But we find out some people like Sebastian and Gary and the Padre, we find that some people are able to see them, and instead of going on and offing themselves, they go and they force other people to gaze upon them, almost as if offering sacrifices to these creatures. But then we find out that we have captured one, and now we're using experiments to see how long we can be exposed to them. That's what humanity is doing. Because one thing about humanity, one thing we're gonna do is we're gonna fight back. We're gonna take whatever's happening and we're gonna find a way. So now we have different ways of expanding on. We're able to extract the information and the blood and the samples we need from people who are infected by them, and able to come up with a way to resist them, because so far they say they've got up to 45 seconds of seeing creature before you ultimately do what you do. And that says a lot about the level in which human ingenuity is advancing. So the Bird Box mythology could be an angelic actuality. The Bird Box creatures could be angelic, and this whole mythos, this whole series could be about man versus God, and ultimately men being triumphant over angels, gods, and heavens. That exists because Bird Box and the creatures themselves from this movie and the previous lean heavily onto those angelic themes, lean heavily into biblical messaging, which is why it's a fascinating case study. While this movie itself really isn't it, this movie doesn't hit the same as the original. It's not as intense, it's not as interesting when it comes to the plot overall. What it does for the mythology, before we get a proper sequel to the original, it expands on the universe, and we're able to dive a little deeper into the mythology, which makes this universe that much more fascinating, which makes the next movie in Bird Box a must watch. Even though this one is kind of, like I said, whatever, building upon it and having that mythology expanded on is genius, and I can't wait to see what they do next. But that's my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, binge on.